This is the Marketing Boss Podcast, where today's top marketing professionals reveal their best tips, tools, and strategies, and we all become better leaders because of it. And here's your host, video marketing expert, Pearson.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another episode of the Marketing Boss Podcast. This is brought to you by Fresh Level, which is a video marketing agency. I'm excited to have on the show with me today Robert Pearson of Rareview. It's a digital design and integrated marketing company based in Orange County, California. So you guys, we're talking today about how to simplify your message and how important that is in today's marketplace. So you guys are definitely going to enjoy this episode. Before we jump into talking with Rob here, I want to introduce him to you guys. So Rob is an award-winning executive and digital strategist with over 15 years experience driving revenue and profit increases. His specialties include developing strategic partnerships, capitalizing on emerging technologies, identifying unique opportunities for growth, and leading high-risk initiatives to outstanding financial success. He's a high-integrity, energetic leader. He's known for his ability to create successful outcomes in complex situations. And he has a solid track record, you guys, of achievement and diverse industry and functional expertise. Rob, welcome to the Marketing Boss Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I know that's a mouthful, so I appreciate it.
It's all good, man. I want to let the people know who you are.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Definitely. So let's jump right in, you guys. Rob, tell us about how, a little bit of your story. How did you get into marketing?
Yeah, I've been in marketing for about 15 years. It's something I've always been really passionate about. In school, one of the things that always caught my attention outside of history, a bit of a history buff, was human behavior, psychology, sociology, marketing, and what kind of things influence those behaviors. So coming out of school, the first thing I could think is, if it's not going to be psychology, which was of an interest to me, marketing was kind of the second step. And taking the leap into, the finance and marketing world was an exciting place for me. I went to school in LA and then moved to New York City. Worked in M&A, mergers and acquisitions, doing financial modeling, but also doing PR and marketing for the intelligence firm as well, which is where I really got my first kind of piece of knowledge there. Then I leveraged that to kind of build my career in the consumer brands and retail space, working for companies like Major League Baseball, Advanced Media, working for Men's Warehouse, Molina Healthcare, Swell, other big brands that drive kind of the retail consumer brand piece. So it's something I'm just passionate about. I love marketing, I love messaging, and I love people.
Awesome. I love that, man. I can relate completely. It's just something that doing this is just such a passion, that I definitely agree with, and I have as well when it comes to marketing and how to take a message and, spread it to the world and inspire action. So I love that.
Yeah, and good marketing's hard, right? Really simple. It's harder to simplify a message than it is to, create one, right? Like, we all write long paragraphs or think, a sentence we write or an email we're writing or a paragraph on our website makes a ton of sense. And then you read it and you realize like it can be quite confusing. So
yeah,
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's why the topic today is just so cool to me, because it's about how can we simplify it down, because, as we talked in the pre-show, the brands that have the more simple message are the ones that win. You know what I mean?
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest brand, one of the biggest brands in the world, Apple, right, has a two-word message: think different, right? So it's pretty simple, right? And think different doesn't have anything to do with hardware or software or anything. It's about them kind of separating themselves from everyone else, doing things a little bit differently. Right? Kind of what I said to you early on. Customers don't really buy the best products or services. They buy the products and services that are the easiest to understand.
Right. You know, it's funny too. A lot of people talked about in this previous election that there was, you know, regardless of, I'm not very political by any means, but just looking at it from a marketing perspective here, there was brilliance in Trump's campaign to an extent because it was clear. It was clear what his slogan was, what his focus was, and he's, of course, still wanting that to continue or whatever. But, you know, I find that even in that, his message was very clear.
I'm a political kind of activist. I love the political world, especially from a marketing perspective, like you're saying. This election was, if you're a marketer or interested in behavior or have any, this election was, nothing's better than that. In fact, one of the things that I found out about this election that Trump actually did really well is he instructed his team early on in the election when he realized he was losing ground to Hillary to go to the Midwest states and to listen to broadcasts and understand what was frustrating people, where their passions were and what was angering them and what pieces of the government were driving them nuts. And he used those simple things throughout his whole campaign to drive his messaging, right? So They all wanted change from the 8 years of Obama. And whether you're a fan or not, and I'm not jumping on either side, I'm just telling you kind of his strategy. Mm-hmm. It was, how can we use these simple things that everyone's pissed about to make my message of my campaign? And you're right. It was simple and clear. For them, they didn't, for that section of the country, they felt like making America great again, which I think you and I both believe that America already is pretty great. But
yeah.
That simple message resonated really, really well with that audience because he listened and he clarified the message and he had a simple campaign structure. And Hillary didn't. She didn't listen. She kind of used her own version of what she thought the American public wanted and drove that down versus listening. You see that in other political campaigns too. You saw that with, Al Gore. You saw that with Mitt Romney. Just people that were a little bit out of touch and driving their own messaging, and which is, Obama had a simple message: change. Right? It was pretty powerful. It's just, Mitt Romney himself was a bit out of touch with American public, right? He's a hedge fund guy that has an elevator for his car. We don't, the normal people in the U.S. don't have that.
Exactly.
So it's feeling like you're a part of that, which all boils down at the end of the day to clear messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you made a really good point there. Even with the example with Trump and his campaign and that tactic was that he, told his team to listen. And I feel like that, you can give us more clarity in that respect, but would you say that the first step into clarifying the message is to listen? Is that what you would advise people do first?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the one thing, right? We spend all this time trying to build a strategy around content and messaging and what it looks like on web and email and in our marketing materials and on social and all these different things, right? But we forget that we're targeting a specific audience, right? And we need to listen to that audience, understand what that audience is trying to say, understand what that audience wants, how their behavior is influencing their actions, right? And if we're able to do that, we can position our brand in the right place and then deliver that clear messaging. So yes, I think step one, listen to your customer, understand your customer. And there's a lot of ways you can do that, right? You can do that with social, you can do that with analytics, you can do that with audience building and testing different messages with that audience. It's pretty powerful if you do it right. But it helps you position your brand, right? It helps you position your brand as a guide for the customer versus like positioning your brand as the hero, right? If you're Luke Skywalker, your brand's Luke Skywalker, you lose. But if your brand's Yoda, that's a pretty powerful position to be in to help the customer down the path.
Yeah,
I know I jumped into
really
Star Wars there, so sorry.
No. It's all good. I mean, I know it's interesting too when it comes to, like you're saying, being the guide, because right now I think as more and more information is available and at the fingertips of the consumer or the business owner or whoever you're looking to work with, it presents I don't want to say a challenge, but it makes it to where people are being empowered by being informed. And I think
Absolutely.
that with us as brands and as companies, we have to align ourselves to be more of a guide, because regardless of who they listen to or whatever, like they're going to get the information from somewhere before they make a decision, which then in my mind thinks it makes sense that we're positioned as a guide to help people through that process. And through that, they'll be more empowered and they'll have all the information that they need to make an informed decision.
That's exactly it. And I think if you're involved in that transition and or transformation of that customer as that guide, I think that's a pretty powerful position for a brand to be. And that's how you get connected from an emotional standpoint. That's how you get connected into the lifestyle of your customer and their journey.
Absolutely.
Right?
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely key. So of course we need to make sure that we listen, we understand the audience, and we align what it is that we're putting together, in terms of our message, and having that to be conveyed well. Now, my next question is, so after we've listened, of course, some people still might say, well, I have so much. Am I clear enough? How do I know that I'm being clear? Are there any indicators that might, serve as criteria for, yep, this message is clear because, it has these components, or, anything to that effect?
Yeah, good question. I always tell the companies that we work with, it's sales first, right? Everyone wants to grow. Are you selling? Are you selling enough? Are you selling products? What does that sale look like? What does that behavior look like? It's a good indication just out of the gate of, is your message clear at all? Are you selling products or services fast enough or enough every month? Or what does that look like? Because that's obviously the most obvious indicator of messaging, right? I'm selling something. I'm making money, right? Mm-hmm. Your brand really exists to serve the desires of your customer. So, that's how I would look at it. So I think one of the things you can do is you can test messaging with your audience. You can talk to your friends. You can see if, it's kind of, I think Don Miller said this really well. There's something called like the grunt test, right? Where if within 5 seconds someone lands on your homepage, like, do they understand what you do, how to get your service, and what that service will mean, or product, and what that service or product will mean to them, right? So
absolutely,
it's really those kind of things that you can look at right out of the gate. I would test it with friends. I would test it with a focus group. If you can, a focus group can be 3 people, right? I would test it with different messaging on social. I would look at your audience, right? These are day-to-day things that you can do to test that message. And you'll see, right? Does that change sales? Does that change the process? Does that change, the way people interact with my brand? Is my audience growing? Are people being advocates of my brand? Are they frustrated? Are they, is it clarifying my customer service? So you can kind of look at all these different pieces, right?
Absolutely. And then too, I mean, now that you say that, because the market changes, needs change, or whatever, your message can also change too, right?
Absolutely, it should. It should transform with the customer, right? Some of the things I think about when I do these things is, what does your customer want, really, as it relates to your brand? Like, what does your customer want to become? Like, how can you help in that transformation of your customer? So, for instance, I'm a big fan of Ray-Bans, right? I think they're a great pair of sunglasses. They're probably too expensive, just in general, what they are, because you've got great competitors like Warby Parker and things like that. But they're a personification of who I like to present myself of. So they're a part of my emotional story of who I am, right? So they're a part of transforming me into something else, but I change. I'm a human. We're all human at the end of the day, and we're all trying to be better, and we're all trying to cut through the clutter of everyday advertising, and you're marketed to everywhere all the time, right? So, if you can be that emotional part of your customer's life, that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I hear relationship in that too, which is, of course, is important,
Very important. Absolutely.
So, okay, I'm loving this conversation. I mean, I'm even getting some clarity on our own brand messaging, which is awesome. So I know that, of course, when, being in marketing or whatever, a lot of times the focus tends to just be on the conversions and, and on the ROI. But what you're saying is that if we do have a clear message, that will in turn, increase, if you will, how people are interacting with the brand or what types of actions that they take. So it's important, for what I'm hearing with you saying, that we need to back up before we get too focused and too, putting the cart before the horse sort of thing by focusing on the conversions, to back up and take a look at the message and test to make sure that it's clear.
Yeah, I think it's about building a plan for yourself. So it's easy to jump into conversion drivers like social acquisition or SEM or SEO or email marketing, or this channel isn't working, or how do we drive more ROI out of this channel, and how do we lower our ROAS, and how do we look at our overall conversion paths and see where we can refine it. And it's easy to go into those things because as marketers, we're all excited about driving more revenue and selling more product or services, which is what we all want to do at the end of the day, right? But if you back up and you build a plan around, like we talked a little bit earlier, around building your brand as the guide to them, clarifying your message, making sure, so a couple things. One is making sure that your homepage has a clear message. Let's say you sell a product. It should be a simplified message about imagery, messaging, all these things should be super simple in understanding, really, having your customer understand really what your brand or product serves them, right? So let's clarify the message on your homepage for them. So when someone gets there, they can pass that grunt test, if we will. And you can search for what that is. It's really like a 3-step process. Just have them come in, understand what your product delivers, how it affects them, and how they buy it. And if you can do that on your homepage, that's pretty powerful. Then look throughout the rest of your brand. So it's funny, mainly this is a little bit more powerful in the service business, but I would say probably the number 2 or 3 top visited portion of a website is the About Us, right? And often people get confused and think that the About Us is actually about them, and it's not. It's about your customer, right? So how can you leverage what you're trying to do and simplify that, which then tells the story of how you're guiding your customer to your product, right? And that's always a place I like to start with our companies that we work with, our brands, is we go to their About Us and we say, okay, this is great for about you, but nobody wants to read about you. So let's talk about what you're doing as it relates to your customer, right? Let's build that emotional part of your brand and tie it to your customer's life. And then look, it's tough. I always say it's harder to simplify. Like I said at the beginning, it's harder to simplify your message than it is to build a message, because cutting words out, if any of you've written blog posts or emails or any of those things, we can write for days, but taking it from 1,000 words to 300 words is way harder.
This is true. This is definitely true.
And so what I would always say is look back and go through it. Go through it with your wife or your kids or your friends or some customers that you're willing to give some, free product to or a discount or something like that, and see if they understand each step of the process with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, I know one of the questions that we're getting in the habit of asking now when it comes to, working with another client or a particular business, we'll ask them, explain to us what you do as if I'm a 5th grader, because
Exactly.
to go about it that way is a really good exercise. So that way you're getting right down to the nuts and bolts with such simplicity that a fifth grader could understand it.
I think that you just nailed it on the head, right? Within a few seconds, what exactly do you offer, and what will this result in if I buy your product or service, right? It should be that simple.
Absolutely. And and I think even, it's just a really good practice. I mean, it is harder to build it once you already have all this stuff. But how can we get it down to one sentence? Build one sentence and then maybe another one after that, right?
Yeah, start with a sentence. So let's say it's a product business, or let's just say it's Rareview, right? Like our agency, we're a service, right? And we're competing with a million other agencies out there. Our, call it key phrase for Rareview, is we're intentionally different, because our focus is everything we do is a little bit different than everyone else, right? So it's 2 words. To put that in perspective, that took us 6.5 months to come up with.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying everybody has to do that in 6.5 months, right? But we went through 40 iterations of our message, and that's because we're a little bit intentional, if I will, about it, right? We're maybe a little bit too focused on it, but at the end of the day, it's about us separating ourselves from everyone else, right? And so if you can do that, if you can take, Rareview, digital design and integrated marketing agency down to intentionally different, then you've got keys there that say, okay, I know they're an agency, sure, great, but they're intentional. Like, that's a powerful word. That's interesting. And they're different. They don't want to be like everyone else. So maybe they'll treat my brand a little bit differently as well, right? It makes that connection. And I'm using me because that's easiest, because we continue to iterate on this as we work with different brands and clients and things like that.
Gotcha. No, that totally makes sense. And this is great advice, you guys, for those who are tuning in from Rob here. Rob, we could talk about this all day. I have probably 15 other questions that we could go to, but I definitely want to be sensitive to time and also the time of the listeners. So as we wrap up, are there any last pieces of advice that you'd like to share with the listeners, and as well how they can contact you or connect with you later if they have more questions?
Sure. Like you said, I appreciate you having me on and talking through this. I think it's a powerful thing to think about. I think as we think as marketers about how we resonate with our consumers, we can, most people are subconsciously scanning the world every day for people who understand them. If you think about like your group of friends, if you think about people that buy products and services, right? It's things they understand. They're friends with people who understand them, right? We're always trying to find people that understand who we are. Call it the human behavior side of things. It's no different with brands, right? We're looking for brands we're looking for brands that help us in our journey and our transformation. So my kind of big suggestion here is, it doesn't take all this huge amount of effort and process and strategy. Sometimes it takes just a few of you sitting in a room saying, if we understand our brand and we're at a level 10 and our customers at a level 1, how do we get them to understand our brand even better and simplify our message? And let's just start cutting out words, start cutting out phrases. Let's start understanding our customer a little bit better and what they do. And these simple things like ask yourself a question. What does my customer want from my product? That's a good start, or service. That's a good start of positioning you as the guide and not the hero. And that's kind of my big suggestion. If you want to contact me, you can always go to rareview.com. You can find me on there. I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter at Rob's Reasons. Or rob@rareview.com, as simple as that. I'm always happy to have a conversation, help anyone in just, understanding what that's like. This is what I'm passionate about. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being with me today, spending some time. And thank you guys for listening. Definitely connect with Rob. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience that you guys can definitely glean from and learn. And, let's all grow together. That's what this is about. So thank you guys for tuning in today. As always, remember, we're here. This is what we do. This is what we love. We're passionate about it. Definitely stay connected. Share this episode with someone that you think would value from it. And guys, remember, a good boss is a good leader. Let's go out there and serve our gift to the world because you're the boss. See you guys next time.
Thanks so much for listening to the Marketing Boss Podcast with your host, video marketing expert, Pearson. We'll catch you next time.